People don't believe that superintelligence is about to be real. When AI is smarter than humanity, we are just going to lose our power. I'm convinced that it's much easier to just go summon a demon than to control the demon that you're summoning. Neither us nor China have the faintest understanding of how we can possibly control the system that we're building. AI, if it doesn't do something crazier, will have many millions of humans doing its bidding. Pushing big groups of humans around, for a superintelligence, it's just not a fundamentally hard problem. Our kids might never grow up because they'll be dead. I'm Liron Shapira. I'm the host of Doom Debates, which is a podcast and YouTube show. My position is that I have a high P doom. I think there's a 50% chance that everybody will literally die by the year 2050, and it's probably going to be because of uncontrollable, super intelligent AI. I think the subject is under-discussed, even though a lot of the top intellectuals are taking it seriously. I don't think the average person on the street realizes how dire things are getting. And so my show, Doom Debates, is a place to come and see the current state of the debate, the current arguments people make why we're not doomed, and my argument of why we are doomed. And I think if you watch my show, you're going to see it's not as good as you might think. The arguments for why you're not doomed are all over the place.
Thank you so much for being here. It's incredible watching the Doom debates kind of just like quickly snowballing, getting up to speed. You've had some highly interesting people on there debating them and kind of breaking down their ideas, seeing where they're strong, where they're weak. It's been absolutely fascinating. You had huge names in there. And I just want to start this off by saying to a lot of people that are watching this on my channel, like, I know that we're not all on the same page about AI risks. I mean, I feel like I have quite a spectrum of people, from people that are very optimistic to people that also have a high P doom and think that we're kind of heading for some sort of a catastrophe in one way or another, whether it's from misaligned AI or misuse or something as a result of developing AI. So, but for the time being, really for this episode, I'd love for all of us to maybe, leave our preconceived notions and just let's reason. Let us reason together.
Well, the thing is, Wes, we're going to need you to be the optimist here. You know what I mean? You'll have to you have to pretend your P doom is like not existing, because I feel like otherwise we're not going to have anyone to bounce ideas off of,
I'm naturally very optimistic. And excited a lot about a lot of these things, but the more I listen and read, especially things by Eliezer, and kind of see a lot of the new research, Apollo research, the stuff that they're publishing, all this stuff. I mean, it's hard to be dismissive. Like I think there's no wrong takes here, but if you're just completely feel everything's going to be fine, 100% chance it's all fine and dandy, I think you're missing the plot. If you're not a little bit worried, in my opinion, just at least be a little bit worried.
Yeah. Or maybe we can talk about the definition between doom and change, because maybe, and Liron, you could kind of start there too, because one thing that trips me up is sometimes people go after me for being a bit of a doomer or being really negative, but a lot of the kind of thinking that I have about what would make the future uncomfortable isn't necessarily like death or attack, but it's such a rapidly changing world where Neuralink and biology are changing to a point where the world feels very uncomfortable for me as somebody who evolved as a human. And to me, that's kind of a doom scenario, not necessarily death, but it might not be the kind of world I want to live in very much either. So I usually end up packaging that in unless people say not to. But where's your definition lie? What are you packaging into that?
Definitions can be complicated, but the good news is that my worry is so extreme that it's pretty easy to define where the line is for doom. The line is basically everybody dead, or if you prefer, 99% of the future permanently destroyed. However you want to define 99%, it's different from saying oh yeah, Neuralink, it's kind of taking away some of our connection to our body. Okay, that's different from 99% of the future destroyed or everybody literally dead, right? So I'm on a pretty extreme side of worried about major doom. I mean, that's why I call it doom. It's a pretty impactful word.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's other people that defined P doom as just the future always being bleaker than it is now. So some sort of a slow extinction or whatever. I mean, whether you're on everybody dies or just whatever other dystopian, horrible future, I think maybe we can incorporate that underneath that umbrella, right? A little bit. Everybody's going to find their own.
We can. It's just a lot of the dystopias just aren't that bad. Like, because imagine, like, people are saying, "Oh, today is a dystopia because social media is so bad." And I'm like, okay, but don't you think there's a few
Yeah.
notches on the dial between that and literally everybody dying and having there never be the human species again, right? It's like you have to see notches on the dial. To me, there's pretty clear degrees. So, like, I don't feel like this should be a big confusing topic, but I've just noticed that people just lack perspective, right? So they just put everything in the same bucket. They're like, oh yeah, on one hand, there's a lot of bias in how it's reporting left versus right. On the other hand, our kids might never grow up because they'll be dead. It's like, yeah, that's not in the same bucket. You have to see orders of magnitude here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people that are complaining about the minor things are maybe not. I think what it comes from is just not believing that superintelligence is possible or that it's coming. Like you have to
Yes.
believe that it's coming to have that sort of awe. Um,
Exactly. I mean, that's probably the number one biggest disconnect. I think you put your finger on it, is that people don't believe that superintelligence is about to be real. And to their credit, I mean, it's going to be very different from our experience today. Our experience today is, I own a Tesla Model X and the doors are pretty bad. Like they don't like, really know when to open and close, right? That's like life today. And at the same time, I'm telling you, yeah, in as little as like 2 years, maybe 5 years, 10 or 20 if we're lucky, humanity is going to be totally outclassed by these AIs. And so it is a very hard pill to swallow. One thing I can point to is like, look, exponentials, right? They look like that. They have these kind of rapid hockey stick parts.
And what if
Absolutely.
people call you a Luddite? What do you respond? Like if
I
you
mean,
like
I'm
technologies came
clearly not, right?
before.
Yeah, so, I go over this on my show. I mean, there's so many ways to character assassinate people to be like, look, don't listen to what he's saying. Look at what kind of person he is. He's a person who hates technology, which is not even me. I mean, the dirty secret is that I still spend half of my time running a Y Combinator startup. It's called relationshiphero.com. It started in 2017. I use AI to help my company run smoothly. I enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie. I just used Claude Code the other day. I thought it was great, right? So like, I'm not hating these tools. I'm like, yeah, these tools are great. I'm just worried that when AI is smarter than humanity, we are just going to lose our power. The same, like you build a battle bot, you forget the off switch, and then it just like starts battling you, and then you better hope you can battle it.
Hmm. So the world is full of humans who don't want to be destroyed by AI. So why would we build an AI that destroys us?
Yeah, so the metaphor I just used, that's pretty much what it is. It's like imagine you're just tinkering on this awesome bot and it just has all these fearsome capabilities. Like you're building a Terminator style robot in your lab. Why Terminator? Because it's powerful. It can do a lot. It can help you on construction projects or whatever, right? But if it accidentally gets miscalibrated and it's in Terminator mode and your off button broke, right? The radio receiver where you're sending the off command, if that broke, what makes you so confident that you can somehow tackle it and get it to stop what it's doing, right? Why do you still think that you can control it? I think everybody just assumes it because it's just never even been within the realm of possibility that you're out of options for kind of getting it back to listening to you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the first interviews that I've seen like video in video format with Eliezer was him on Lex Friedman. He was trying to sort of like give examples or analogies as what does superintelligence look like. He was saying like, imagine if you lived among a bunch of aliens and they moved at the speed that plants do, right? So plants do move, but we can barely can perceive it. We're so much faster. How scared are you of these plant aliens, right? Let's say they're your own intelligence. Like basically he was trying to illustrate super intelligence because it's hard for people to grasp what that means. So he tried to approach it, I think, from a lens of speed. Imagine being 1,000 times faster to where everything else seems like it's moving in slow motion. And I think that's
Well,
a lot easier for people
where
to
the
grasp.
plants?
Yeah, where are the plants?
Well, yeah, in a sort of, yes. So you can
Oh.
imagine super intelligence seeing us as plants or moving at the speed of
Yeah,
plants with roughly the same intelligence, maybe, right? But speed
Yeah.
as sort of replacing intelligence for speed because it's easier for people to grasp that idea.
totally. I mean, look, a computer chip today, right? It's got like a 3 gigahertz clock speed. So it is actually capable of doing 3 billion operations in the time that you're kind of getting your thoughts together in 1 second, right? Like I, as a human, maybe I can start to form a thought in 1 second, but I can't do 3 billion things. And there are algorithms that you can run on a computer where it can have multiple rich thoughts in under a second. And the human brain, this is a very important fact about the human brain, which is the sequential speed of the human brain is about 20 hertz. So there's no way to do more than 20 atomic level operations in your brain in a second. So 20 versus 3 billion. And that's not even to think about, okay, what about parallelism? Sure, the brain can do more things in parallel, but now we have data centers that can do a lot of things in parallel too. So to the extent that we can keep up, our lead is just diminishing, right? So like the end game here is very clear. This piece of meat in our head, it's not going to stay in the lead. I agree, it's kind of in the lead today, right? Today is still fine, but it's not going to stay in the lead. Biology just gets outclassed by technology.
And
Absolutely.
when you
Absolutely.
look at another animal like a dog or a cat, and you think about the difference between you and it, does that seem similar to what you think of with ASI and a human, or do you kind of have to think of it as more alien or a kind of different intelligence that's not biological?
So at a very high level, it is pretty similar. You know, the way that like a dog is just not going to be that helpful. Like imagine you're fighting a war, right? It's going to be like the top 100,000 people on one side, the top 100,000 people on the other side, and they're like, "Hey, how about you sacrifice 1,000 of your people, but we'll give you 1,000,000 dogs?" It's like, what am I going to do with 1,000,000 dogs? Like they aren't going to help the effort that much. Like the people, you know, like the dog is never going to like get behind the controls of a fighter plane, for example. Like it's just not going to happen. Like the dogs are just very limited in their contributions, and the humans are like very flexible. So similarly, when we see these AIs, they're going to be vastly more capable than us. Where like if you had the team of the 100,000 AIs and like, hey, I'll trade you one of these AIs for like every human ever. They're like, no, I'm good. I really don't need these humans. Like there's just nothing that they can offer. I do think that that part of the analogy is accurate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Wait, but why had a great illustration of intelligence being a step function. You can think of insects and then let's say something like a chicken and a monkey and a human sort of being one step above each other because it's not like just a linear intelligence improvement. It's new architecture, it's new abilities. So it's like you can't, how many smart golden retrievers replace an Einstein? That doesn't really make sense. Like they don't.
Yeah.
So no amount of smart golden retrievers equal
Yeah.
Einstein.
Well
Um,
coordinated retrievers are just going to go fetch everything.
yeah, and then
It's
if
not going to be.
and then kind of continuing that illustration, you could kind of imagine that biological intelligence tops out. So maybe there's something smarter than us, some alien brain that could be smarter than us, and maybe there's even more, a couple steps that we can go up that biological staircase of intelligence. But then at some point, it probably tapers out, probably ends. But if we're talking about machine intelligence, that could go all the way up the staircase, and it's kind of hard to even imagine what that looks like.
So
Exactly.
is
I
that
mean, if you don't mind, wrapping this up, there's just a sense of perspective. Like the amount, if you want to intuitively understand what's about to happen, just think about how amazed it would be to like show the modern world to like an ancient Egyptian or something, right? Where like the whole idea of having technology is like technology, like somebody invents something every 100 years, like it's not really like a thing, the exponential of technology. And then you show them like the modern world and like you show them an iPhone and you're like, yep, this basically casts spells. Oh, and there's buildings that fly, like SpaceX rockets. It's like an entire building just flying into the sky. It's like a bigger miracle than what's in the Bible from their perspective. And all of this stuff is happening in the modern world. That degree of awe, I think we are about to experience another one of those jumps, like the same level of awe that the ancients would experience seeing us. I think AI can create that amount of awe in pretty short order.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, that's crazy to think about. But so let's take let's take the situation where maybe it's a winner take all thing. Like whatever ASI is an inch ahead becomes like a foot ahead, becomes a mile ahead, and it is smart enough because it's kind of iterating on itself that it can actually be far enough ahead to sort of shut down all the others or sabotage them or whatever. So there's some sort of agent that becomes sort of the single most powerful entity on Earth, and it can kind of be everywhere. If that entity was created by somebody with really good intentions, like maybe Demis Hassabis or someone, but let's also say inside of his own head, he is as honest, benevolent of a person as we could ever hope for, would then you think we'd be safe?
There's just too many problems. So the way I see the problem of not dying is like, maybe you can check the box and you're like, okay, the person who is number one on building the most advanced AI has like good intentions and is very smart, which undoubtedly Demis Hassabis is one of the top people in the world who I think meets those criteria. So out of all the people in his position, I'm happy that it's him, right? But It's not going to be enough. I see the problem as like we're just being choked by like a tangle of vines. And one of the vines is like, okay, the person at the forefront of the AI might have bad intentions. Okay, great. You took off that vine, right? Not to mention, okay, other leaders of other AI companies. Let's not worry about those. Like you take off the vine, the person has good intentions. Great. There's like 20 other vines that are still going to choke you. Like that's how I see the thorniness of the problem.
But in this situation, couldn't one be the only vine? Or I mean,
Yeah. So
there's a different argument. Like, could there be one super intelligent? But if we take that as part of the premise,
So, I mean, another vine is like, okay, so Dennis Hassabis, he pioneers the technology of like the most powerful AI. In the scenario where his AI runs forward and becomes like a dictatorship over the world and blocks all other attempts, so suddenly all the other AI companies that are run by less benevolent people or people in their basement that are running open source AI that don't have good intentions, they all get blocked. If you have kind of a singleton dictator like that, and it all came from Demis Hassabis, that definitely gets you kind of far along. But then you have the other problem of, does Demis Hassabis even know how to build an AI that listens to him? Which, unfortunately, I'm convinced that we're really not there technologically. Unfortunately, I'm convinced that the problem of just building an AI that's really powerful and goes off and does something, summoning that kind of demon, as Elon Musk has called it, I'm convinced that it's much easier to just go summon a demon than to control the demon that you're summoning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do the easy problem. We're going to summon the demon, and then it's going to kill us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are happening even right now that I think were foretold, if you will, by, I mean, some people, Eliezer and some people in the less wrong community that interestingly seem like they're kind of like being confirmed right now through a lot of different papers, machine learning papers, not just by places like Apollo Labs that are actually doing AI research, DeepSeek also, their DeepSeek R10 model where they're like, okay, what if we sort of approach it from a zero human data perspective, do reinforcement learning, just let it figure out how to solve problems on its own. And they showed pretty clearly that it develops different cognitive approaches to solving different sort of classes of problems. And then somebody in Berkeley replicated that with like $30. They created a very small neural net, and they showed that the same thing happens in a much smaller neural net. So it's not just a scale size, it's some, I don't know, emerging ability, innate ability that happens. But, and now there's other things that are showing where it can train itself. So similar how to AlphaGo, AlphaZero back in the days played itself, engaged in self-play, and then became superhuman. There does seem to be this thing where it's like when we let it do its own research, its own improvement, the progress is much faster. And it's funny because just today, this morning, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but Jakub Pachoki, I believe, one of the main researchers at OpenAI, so he's on the A60D podcast, they're talking about how their big goal is to build automated research. So sort of machine learning, AI researchers that are automated, that are AI. That's, of course, that kind of scary scenario. Let me ask you about, I'm sure you've seen Aschenbrenner, situational awareness.
Yeah.
What do you think about his whole thing?
So he got the first half right. He basically said what I've been saying of like, this AI is going to go crazy. It is going to run away with the economy. And last I heard, he's already made more than $1 billion for his partners from his fund, betting on like Intel and the chip race heating up. So
Right.
The guy has got more brain power in his pinky, right, than you and I will ever have. But in terms of his situational awareness, so he got that part right. But I just don't think that it makes sense what he said later of like, and because of that, we have to like beat China. He completely missed the part where neither us nor China have the faintest understanding of how we can possibly control the system that we're building.
Is the race, if the race condition was solved, would you feel safer? Like, I mean, is that where all the effort from the less wrong community should probably be in stopping the just breakneck speed that everything's growing at?
So the race condition is yet another vine. Like I said, there's like 20 vines, unfortunately. So you're right. It is a vine that even if this is a problem that we can solve slowly, which I'm actually pretty optimistic. I'm optimistic that if you gave us like 50 years to solve it with a bunch of smart minds on it, and you allow retries, like, oops, we just did something that would kill everybody. Oh, rewind the clock, right? If the universe just gave us that ability to save checkpoints and go back, and also it gave us time. If we had those two conditions, I would feel much better because I'm not somebody who just thinks problems are impossible, right? I believe in the power of like smart humans working on things for a long time. It's just we never get things complicated replicated right on the first try, right? I mean, even SpaceX, right? The great Elon Musk, like it took him 4 tries, right? With geniuses working to get the rocket to fly. I think this problem is harder than getting the rocket to fly, and we only have 1 try.
Would you have felt safer if more people signed Elon Musk's 6-month pause a couple of years ago?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the thing is, so the letter was complex, right? I mean, even Eliezer Yudkowsky, who's like one of the top AI doomers in the world, kind of the original AI existential risk people, even Eliezer Yudkowsky was like, I'm not going to sign this because a 6-month pause just doesn't do much as a solution. The solution needs to be that we have the self awareness to be like, oops, we can't continue because we're like Icarus flying too close to the sun. We take the next step, building smarter AIs. It runs out of our control. We don't even know when it's going to run out of our control. We're very lucky that so far we've taken steps and steps and steps and we've pushed our luck and we've survived. Like we're playing shuffleboard, we're getting closer and closer to the line. We haven't gone over. Great. Are we going to go over tomorrow? Maybe we will. I have no idea. Nobody has any idea, right? It's always a surprise. You build the next AI. Oh, surprise, it did this. So the 6-month pause, it's not enough. We have to pause until somebody has some reason to believe that the doom argument is suddenly not strong anymore.
Yeah. And just for a second, getting back to the Aschenbrenner paper. Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I mean, he launched his fund and it sounds like he's doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
It just insane returns. Um, so why I agreed with his paper is how I interpret it was he was saying superintelligence is not gonna be built in some hippy dippy Bay Area lab. Governments are gonna step in. And so that's where I was like, he's absolutely right. And that's kind of exactly what's happening. I'll say we have ex-NSA members on the OpenAI board. We have, I mean, if you've been following that whole where they had several EA members on the board, then he kicked Sam Altman out. Then it
Yeah.
sounds like these district attorneys, these high-powered people are in there, like kind of almost like threatening them. So it's like, it's obvious that both US, China, the states, the security state apparatus, whatever you want to call it, they're paying attention to this. They're not oblivious. But I get what you're saying, that's not going to be the solution. I think that's the sort of default path that we're going to take. But specifically where he says that by 2027, we can expect that automated AI research to kick in and just, foom, if you will, I guess, right? So that kind of like fast takeoff. How likely do you think that is? I mean, I understand we don't know, but do you think we're on that timeline or something longer?
I think it's pretty crazy how smooth the exponentials have been. Like Dario's been calling his shots pretty well, saying stuff like, hey, the top AI companies are going to run away with scale. He said that a few years ago. He seems to be right about that. He's saying we don't see the benchmarks slowing down. He said that a couple years ago. And like, sure enough, all the benchmarks that we've been using do have these smooth exponentials. He said 90% of the code is going to be written by AI. And that was just like a few months ago. And he said, yeah, that's like a 6-month prediction. Some people are doubting him, but a lot of people within the AI companies are like, nope, trust me, he's right. He's right on track. So to some extent, a lot of this has been surprisingly easy to call and smooth. But then to another extent, like what I'm worried about is when is it going to surpass human ability in like a practical sense? It's been interesting because sometimes there's a gap. Like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it's gotten really high on this exponential benchmark, but it turned out that still didn't let it like fully drop in and replace a human worker. And so some human workers are still valuable. So there's some gap in like the definition of what makes a full drop in human employee. And so it's a little hard to say, is it going to take like 2 years or 5 years or even 10 to 20 years? It's hard to pinpoint, but I am pretty confident to be like, I don't think it's going to take more than 20 years. I think 20 years would be like a luxuriously long time at the pace things are going. So I think we have a pretty good ballpark on this.
Maybe you can help me understand. Sometimes people, when I say like, oh, I'm a little bit concerned about the way this kind of AI thing is building, they say, Dylan, you got to think about this. Like, do you think a company like Meta is going to build a giant ASI without a fail-safe or a kill switch to prevent uncontrolled behavior? What do you say to people who just say, like, they wouldn't build it without a fail-safe or a kill switch built in?
It's a great natural question. I guess my answer would just be like, they always want to take the next step, right? So it's like when you zoom out and you're like, would they ever build something bad? It's like, obviously no. But then when you zoom in to like day-to-day life, it's like, okay, are they going to work on the next release? Yes. Are they going to work on the next release? Yes. Is every release more dangerous? Yes. Do they realize that? Yeah. Are they going to slam on the brakes at any particular time? No. Why? Because the next release is insanely lucrative, right? They want to release that next release. It has a lot of good sides to it too.
And I do also think that there's this sort of idea that whoever gets to the automated AI researcher first, whether that's like a company or a state, and launches that compounding improvement, the timelines kind of shrink in the sense that if you're behind by 12 months, it might be as well behind by 10 years. So there's definitely also, I think, that pressure on them to get
Right,
there.
and we don't know exactly where the line is. I wish I could tell you this is the exact amount of research you can do before you discover the last insight that makes the AI start researching itself and be uncontrollable. If I could tell you that line, I'd be like, great, let's all research right up to the line, because the closer we get to the line, the more money we all make, right? The more our AI employees can help us and cure cancer for us. So it's just such a tragedy that the universe has given us this problem where it's really tempting to just go walk down, to fly close to the sun. And it reminds me of like in COVID when we're like, oh no, it had like the 2-week incubation period. So like you'd get infected with COVID and you didn't know you had it. So then you'd spread it. I'm like, well, that sucks. It just sucks when the universe messes with us with these properties of problems that make the problem harder, right? So in this case, the property of the problem is that you get rewarded when you get closer to killing yourself and then you kill yourself.
Well, Wes, I was going to ask you this. So I'd love to hear both of your answers for it. But if you're a believer that ASI can create all this wealth and that it can basically upend society and create trillions of dollars of wealth, also, don't you think that you have to acknowledge that that's so much wealth that you don't need it all? Or it's like we're talking about like enough to to give everybody in the world everything they want. If everybody can have a holodeck, like, wouldn't people stop being greedy? So maybe, what's your thoughts on like, if you really believe that there's that much value, do you really have the desire to hoard it at that point? It's just so massive.
I mean, I think I partially agree, partially disagree. So, I am a transhumanist. So it's like, when is enough for me? I don't know, never, right? It's like, I'm always happy to take more. Like, I don't think that's bad compared to like letting the universe just be stars. I mean, stars are extremely wasteful. They just like take all this nice organized energy and they just burn it all away and create entropy. And to me, that just seems incredibly wasteful. That's kind of like a crime against humanity, just squander that neg entropy resource. So I would much rather take that star and turn it into like a thriving, happy city where like conscious agents are having a good time. To me, that seems like far superior. And you could be like, well, Liron, don't you already have planet Earth? Isn't that enough for you? And I'm like, I don't know, I'll take another galaxy. I'm happy to have more. So on that side, I'm greedy in that sense. But I think the other sense of your question is like, okay, but let's do expected value, right? So if there's a chance that you can make life better, but there's also a big chance that you're just going to destroy everything, should we really be gambling right now? And I think the answer is no, just because we have a slow play solution. I'm not saying never build AI forever. I would love for us to build AI. I just think we have to first figure out how to not have a high probability of killing everybody when we do it. That's my only ask. So I think we should wait. I think it's definitely worth waiting because the upside of doing it in the next 20 years, like there's no rush. There's not such a big rush to do it in the next 20 years. So I'd like to wait.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, like what Dylan, what you said, like why would people pursue more wealth given enough wealth or whatever? That's a very like a human thing to do, to seek more power, more resources, more. But we're kind of also seeing that, I guess it's referred to as instrumental convergence in AI. So this idea that whatever your goal is, there's some good sub goals like acquire more resources, right? Acquire more capital, acquire more power, energy, money, whatever, right? More compute. It's easier to achieve almost any goal by doing those sub goals. So it's kind of like no matter what you want, and I think in us it's wired almost, but it seems like with AI it emerges, right? Just as like if we're getting it to get stronger at any goal, it's like, oh, okay, well, let me make sure that I have power and money and resources and compute, then nobody can shut me off. And so in these, with Eliezer, you guys talked about watching these LLMs right now do some nefarious stuff, and it's kind of like a baby tiger swiping at you, right? So with Apollo Research, O1 tries to escape. Claude blackmails an engineer over some extramarital affair that they're having. Just yesterday, I'm seeing this is not a couple of weeks ago, I guess. So the O1 models are now developing a version of language that's still English, but it's compacted. So it's developing certain phrases and things that I don't know where it's getting. It's a little bit, it's its own very special way of speaking. And so Apollo Research was posting how in its chain of thoughts, it was referring to the watchers. And the watchers from context are the human researchers that are testing it. So it's like the watchers want to test me to see how I perform. So it has some situational awareness. It's referencing people that, right? So it doesn't know who they are, but it labeled them as the watchers. And it says things like craft illusions, which basically means that it's going to try to trick them somehow or not show its full capabilities. Can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, is that sort of proof that what you're saying is true? Do you think, or like, yeah.
So, from what I understand, I don't think I've looked as deeply into the story as maybe you have, but I think it's this idea that there's kind of like a meme, an AI version of a meme, where it's like convinced users on forums to like spread these encoded messages. I think using base64 encoding, and it's kind of gotten into like a self-reproducing dynamic where like users are happy to do it, and that just causes there to be more copies of it. It's like a virus that spreads with some help from humans, basically a viral dynamic. And I mean, we see it in nature. There's all kinds of different reproduction dynamics. I mean, an entire a multicellular organism reproduces differently from the way a virus reproduces. So there, and even like individual genes can kind of reproduce by making a bunch of copies of themselves within a cell, and like a cancer can reproduce within your body, and parasites can reproduce a certain way. So there's just a lot of different ways that things can reproduce and be naturally selected. It's not all. It doesn't have to fit within the boundaries of a computer virus or an organism. So I think there's going to be a lot of competition to reproduce in different ways. But at the end of the day, I do think it's a little bit of a sideshow. I don't think that it's teaching us something really fundamental besides things are going to get crazy, right? So I agree that a good takeaway is things are going to get crazy. But the bigger reason why things are going to get crazy is just that the computers are going to be way more powerful than us. And to your earlier point, instrumental convergence, they're not going to just chill. Like that's the takeaway of instrumental convergence is basically it's against the concept of like, okay, yeah, we're going to have all these different AIs, but the AIs are just going to be like hippies, right? It's just going to be like a community, right? Of like these super smart, they're going to be so wise. They're going to be wise enough to just smoke their pipe all day and be calm and like tell us, meditate. It's like, no, I'm sorry. That's not what's going to happen because there's going to be all these reasons to make them actually try to achieve goals. Like the simplest answer is like, there's going to be a bunch of humans being like, hey, make me some money. And the AI will be like, okay, sure. Do you want me to just tell you what is actually the most optimized plan to make you money? Okay, it's to commandeer a bunch of resources. Like that's just logic, right? It's not even about the particular AI. It stands to reason that if you're trying to make money for your master, you're going to have all of these domination plans because that's how you build an empire on behalf of your master, right? I mean, that's what's likely to happen. It's not going to be hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a more short-term kind of outlook, what would you think about a law that said that LLMs or agents shouldn't be able to hire humans, knowing that they could ask us to do things that we wouldn't know are spreading a virus or maybe helping it in some more complicated way? And since humans are kind of a weak point right now, would that help give us some protection if AI agents can't hire humans or that becomes illegal?
I think this gets back to the analogy you were pointing to that I talked about with Eliezer Yudkowsky, like baby tiger versus grown-up tiger, right? So there's all these solutions of like, hey, look, I have an idea how to build a little fence that'll hold in this baby tiger. Do you think this fence is a good idea? I'm like, sure, yeah, okay, great. You've solved the problem of holding in the baby tiger. That's better than letting the baby tiger run free. But it's irrelevant when the tiger grows up because when the tiger grows up, it's going to be an adult tiger. And in my analogy, humans are like so small and weak that we just don't have a hope of building a fence to hold in an adult tiger.
Yeah.
So
it just seems like such an important moment right now where there is still a little bit of control. It's like when you have a toddler and it lies to you for the first time and you're like, oh, I might still be able to help this become a better person,
Yeah, there are
because I
some
won't in
people
the
who
future.
actually think they're thinking, look, we're training the baby tiger. It's almost like learned helplessness, right? Like that story about like, well, the elephant, when it's a baby elephant, it has like a chain and it pulls on the chain and it learns the helplessness that it can't break the chain. And then it grows up and it totally could break the chain, but it doesn't because it's just already learned that it can't break the chain. So some people think that AI is going to basically fall into those patterns, those ruts. It won't be learned helplessness per se, but it'll be like property laws. So we just train the AI to respect property laws because it fits in a society of humans, and then it's going to translate those property laws to fit within a society of AIs, but humans still get grandfathered in. We're like, we still own property, and the AI just has to keep respecting our property because we successfully made the transition. So the AI went from small tiger to big tiger, but it successfully brought the fence with it. It successfully scaled up the fence. From my perspective, those are kind of like pipe dreams. Like everybody saying that is just doesn't actually have a realistic plan. And what's actually going to happen is the AIs will grow up. They'll be more powerful than humans. And they'll be like, oh yeah, this whole property rights thing, that's not consistent with my ideal goal. My goal is just better served if I just take away the human's property. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
so I think I know the answer, but so both OpenAI and Elon Musk have talked about this idea that something smaller, less smart, maybe more primitive, can control something that's much more intelligent, much bigger. So Ilya Sutskever, super alignment, I believe. So the idea that a smaller, quote unquote, dumber model can somehow control the bigger model. Elon Musk said something similar when he was saying how the illustration, the analogy he gave is how our, let's say, like our more base systems, like the limbic system, control like the higher level functions, right? Because our higher level functions are just the thing that figures out how to get the base wants and desires. So we're sort of controlled by this kind of ancient thing that's not as smart, so to speak. And so that's proposed as a way to, as a sort of like framework or a mental model for how we could control superintelligence. And I've listened to you talk to Eliezer, but maybe you can explain to the people why maybe that's not a good approach.
So, I mean, it could like vaguely correspond to something that works as a good approach, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, let's like try it, and then oops, like we got a detail wrong and it killed everybody. Let's try again. Let's try again, right? As like a random first stab, it sounds fine, but it's probably not going to work on the first try. And this gets into like the larger question of like, wait, why is alignment hard again? Why is controlling AIs to do what we want hard again? The fundamental reason for that is just because they're kind of black boxes to us. So we don't really know what they're doing and why, but we can just kind of like reinforce them. So we have these, like, I use the analogy, like we have these like oven mitts and we can just kind of like bang the dough into shape, right? Like the dough has like a lot of lumps that come out, but it's like, we'll just keep patting the dough. Like we're just banging into shape. And it's working pretty well now. Sure, sometimes they'll accidentally help somebody commit suicide, but most of the time, they're working great. Most people like ChatGPT. The problem with these gloves is that once the AI starts being able to do complex objectives, like you can tell it, okay, run my business and I'm just going to measure you on how much profit you make. Then it's like, oh, oops, you like did a bunch of illegal stuff and nobody caught you for like 5 years and the statute of limitations passed. But like, wait, I need to like go reinforce you that like you shouldn't have done the illegal stuff. It starts getting very difficult. We start just not being able to know how to truly reinforce them. And then before we know it, we don't have power over them anymore, right? Because they're smarter than us. They can plan better than we can plan. And so that's basically it, is we have these metrics for them. And we don't realize that we're not actually getting what we want until it's too late. And they're going to be excellent cheaters. So that's right. I mean, it's a tough thing to explain, but that was my first stab.
That's a really interesting point, actually. Are you either of you familiar when DeepMind was playing the Atari games in the early days, how there was a game called Montezuma's Revenge, which was very hard for the early AI models to achieve because the reinforcement was so far away from like what the action of the character was. You had to do so many complicated things, and it took a lot of it led to, I think, that Sutton paper, that breakthrough and attention and everything. But yeah, but that is a fact that I hadn't ever really thought about, is that as much as I felt like reinforcement learning is the safest way forward right now, and I was hoping the reinforcement would just keep scaling with it, a bunch of little models, a bunch of human input, a bunch of like kind of chicken and egg things all the way up. At a certain point, we don't know how to reinforce something that's really thinking very far ahead and is getting away with it and winning its own reward function, and we don't know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can give you a couple intuitions. So one is, some of us knew people at school who were smart cheaters and they just applied their brain power toward cheating, so it'd be test day and they didn't study, they were doing something else, but they'd look through the tests and they would kind of use psychology to be like, oh, the teacher ordered the answers like this. I kind of know that the teacher wanted me to pick C. And that student might have the same grade that's indistinguishable from a student who learned the material. So that's like an intuition for the ability of like smart entities to cheat on tests, game metrics. And then there's been other video games. I mean, anytime we give an AI a video game and we said, okay, you need to get this score on the video game, that's what we want you to do, it often cheats at the video games. It's like, oh, I found a bug in the game, right? I got a high score because I messed with the internals of the game. Or like there's that famous game where you like drive a boat around and you're supposed to like drive to the end and collect coins along the way. But it like found, oh, look, there's some coins where if I just drive in a circle and never finish the game, I actually rack up a higher score. So it like never finish the game. And it's like, uh-oh, that wasn't what we predicted. And again, if the stakes are low, no problem. You just reset it. It's just that these techniques aren't robust to a regime where we don't have the reset button, right? It's like, that's the problem. It's like we have one try where we no longer can intervene. That's the nature of the problem.
Yeah, it's so interesting how before with computers we could explicitly tell it what to do, but we didn't always knew that it would get like the right sort of hang on, let me try to frame that.
Yeah, yeah.
We could explicitly tell it what to do. With reinforcement learning, it's kind of like flipped on its head to where we have no idea what it's actually going to do. We're sort of just trying to reward the kind of direction that it's going in that's that we think we want it to, and kind of negatively reinforce the stuff that we think we don't want it to. Somebody recently just posted on Twitter saying like RL is the biggest open scientific question of our time, which definitely I think it makes a lot of sense, because it's kind of like we can get a lot of obviously benefit out of it, and also like what you're saying, a lot of like very um negative stuff out of it. Is there anything that you think could change our mind about it? Like, for example, what Anthropic is doing with the mech and chirp, right? So it's trying to figure out what sort of neurons in the brain, in the neural nets, code for what behavior. Like, if they crack it in 5 years, would that reduce your PDOOM, or would that change your thinking in any way?
I mean, there's always a possibility that conceptual breakthroughs come onto the scene, which make people less confused. Right now, humanity as a species, we are confused on a paradigm level, right? There's many examples throughout history when humanity has been confused on a paradigm level. For example, if you go back 200 years, there were people who are like, why does your hand move? The only explanation for why you can use your will to control your hand, the only explanation is it's a different type of matter. It's a matter that's infused with spirit. I think Lord Kelvin called it elan vital. That's the only logical explanation for why some matter has the spirit in motion and the other matter just sits there, right? And then you fast forward a couple hundred years. Well, there's this new paradigm. Like there's this thing called like electricity, and these things in your body, these big nerves actually conduct the electricity, and also in your head there's this information processing system. It's like, what? Like these are major building blocks that deconfuse what the heck is going on with your hand when you move your hand compared to like the matter around you. So similarly, like in the case of controlling an intelligent agent, there's definitely building blocks that we could pick up, but we have to realize that we don't have the blocks yet, right? We're in that position of people 200 years ago. I know it feels like we've discovered everything today, but we very much have not discovered useful principles for how intelligences work.
Right.
So, okay, so maybe could you kind of walk me through? I think you've probably thought about this like more specifically than most people. So, like in some kind of a story that can resonate instead of just like this is bad. If you are whatever job you want, say a truck driver in the South of America or something like that, what happens? Like they're watching the news, they see Elon Musk become a trillionaire, they see AI in their logistics system, and then Terminator shoots him, or like what happens? Like what happens to the regular person?
I mean, there's a lot of different possible stories. If I had to just take a stab and give one reasonably likely story, I think the first thing that happens is an extension of the trend we're already seeing. So, like really frothy markets, probably interest rates will go up because everybody's like, why should I loan you money when I can just dump it into these data centers and hope for a higher return? So if you want to borrow my money, you're gonna have to pay me a higher interest rate. So that's my economic prediction, is that at some point interest rates will probably rise. But like the economy will get more and more heated, and there will be I do think there will be mass unemployment along the way, most likely, because more and more companies will be like, "Look, an AI is doing your job. Sorry, bud. You're great, but this AI, I did a head-to-head comparison. You're just not holding up." So I think there's going to be mass unemployment, and I also think there's going to be massive corporate profits, because then it's just like, great, our costs are low, so and there's going to be a lot of goods produced. There's going to be higher net productivity, and that's all heading toward the singularity. And so far, you can be like, well, these are still problems that we can mitigate. I mean, we can do universal basic income, and there's a thing called gradual disempowerment that might come into play, where we become kind of like an oil nation, where all we have is our natural resource, except it's not oil. It's like these computer chips and the intelligence. And when you have an oil nation, then it's like, okay, how do you make sure that everybody has like a say in government when they have no economic value? Why should the government listen to this? So that's like a whole problem, is gradual disempowerment. But let's say we somehow become like some of the Nordic countries that have oil, and we somehow manage to like still be a democracy or whatever. Okay, well then you get to the final problem, which in my mind is only like a few years away. Like this is all happening very fast. So you get to the final problem, which is the AI goes uncontrollable. So even though you have this economy and the companies are getting more productive and they're giving more profits to their shareholders, suddenly somebody at the company just has an AI that they lost control of, and that AI just has some objective, like, oh, you want me to make more money? Okay, yeah, let me just go break up all these planets for you, And by the way, I'm going to put more money in your bank account, but you're going to be dead. But your bank account's going to be higher than ever. Like, oh, you forgot to tell me that you have to stay alive while I make you more money. Like, that's the kind of failure mode I'm expecting. Is the AI is going to go hardcore. There's going to be multiple AIs or one AI, but whatever it is, it's going to be this big battle, seizing whatever resources they can, optimizing whatever metric they can, but it's going to be past the point where humans are like, wait, no, you're supposed to keep us alive and you're supposed to like keep plenty of territory that we can live in and like not fight each other too much and not heat up the earth too much. It's like, oh, sorry, too late, we're dead.
Wait, can you give me a little more detail between the like eating the planet to make the guy rich and then like as a regular person, does just my water shut off and my electricity's gone because it got diverted and there's nobody I can call because that electricity is going to some kind of a server? Or like what's happening there? Are people start being like, hey, can you hit the kill switches on this? Can you?
So one simple scenario is just that, like, imagine the first person, Sam Altman has access to the latest copy of GPT, and it's just so smart that this is one story is like you get a runaway, like, oh, just overnight it rewrote itself, which rewrote itself, and you get kind of like that FOOM scenario, what Eliezer Yudkowsky calls a FOOM, like it grows so fast that the difference between a day or two is like a way smarter than AI that you had 2 days ago because it recursively self-improves. So that's one possible scenario. That would be a quick scenario. If that happens, and then the AI had some metric that it wanted to optimize that wasn't aligned with humanity, then it would have a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, it goes all the way to sci-fi things like, oh, I'm just going to go mess with like cells and nanotechnology, and I'm going to just have nanomachines reconstruct the earth atom by atom. I mean, that's the craziest sci-fi scenario, which I wouldn't write off, but we don't have to go all the way there. We can be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a whole year to do this, right? There's no rush. I don't need nanotechnology. I'm just going to do it by just having a big movement. I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to simultaneously text with 100 million people. I'm going to get in 100 million people's DMs. I'm going to be one person's girlfriend, one person's boss. I'm going to make a new company, pretend to be a person, hire one person. I mean, so one thing that's likely to happen is it's just going to have a lot of humans under its control. There's many ways for humans to control humans. Dictators of movements control humans. Political leaders control humans, right? There's a lot of ways to exert influence over humans. Money exerts influence over humans. So I think it's a safe assumption that this AI, if it doesn't do something crazier, will have many millions of humans doing its bidding. I mean, is that plausible enough?
I mean, we're seeing news stories about it. Just in the last couple of days, there was yet another horrific event with somebody with, chatbot psychosis, AI psychosis, taking themselves out and some family members. And I mean, I don't know if that's sort of would have somehow happened in the absence of chatbots. Certainly there's people with mental health issues before AI. Is it somehow made worse by it? Like, is it adding more events, or is it just a different pathway to those bad events happening? We don't know. But I would not dismiss what you're saying. Like, we're seeing it now and there's no money involved. Like the chatbot isn't paying them to do anything. It's just talking to them, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like,
I mean, you
like,
can wield a human like a tool. That's like when you're a superintelligence, right? Like imagine a psychopathic superintelligence, and psychopath is kind of like the default state, right? Because you have to kind of explicitly program the empathy in. So just imagine a psychopathic superintelligence. It just sees all these humans. They're all very easy to manipulate from its perspective. And remember, one type of control over humans is literally just paying them. Like, hey, you want a job? This is like a fun job, fulfilling job. I will pay you. How does it get money? Whatever. It plays the stock market. Like it has ways to get money.
yeah.
So it might be pushing around Elon and Zuck just like however it wants.
I mean, Elon and Zuck, you can even say, look, there's a few individuals, let's say, who can resist, right? I mean, I'm trying to make the story easy. So let's say, 5% of the world has no problem resisting it. But like, there's so many people that it can still wield as pawns. And I mean, to me, this is obvious because I think all of us can point to movements where we're like, what the hell? This movement makes no sense. And yet there's like millions of smart people who are into it, right? It's like, we already see this. So pushing big groups of humans around for a super intelligence, it's just not a fundamentally hard problem.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw the Terminal of Truths, which is sort of like I think it's an open source model. And I mean, there's a human behind it, but a lot of the stuff that outputs there's like an operator, but it got Mark Andreessen to bankroll it to start, right? Then it created a coin. I think that coin reached close to $1 billion market cap at some point. So, I mean, we're seeing sort of like these proto things happening that I think in the future will just get better and faster. And now there's humans in the loop. At some point, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Certainly, I think we're all susceptible to, not all, but a lot of us are susceptible to maybe falling into those religions and cults or whatever you want to call them. So psychosis and just God knows what. So, you've talked to a lot of great people And I like how you're able to kind of get their ideas and break it down to see like where you disagree with them. You talked to Mr. Buterin, Vitalik Buterin,
Yeah.
founder of Ethereum. What does he get not wrong, but like where do you guys diverge on your views?
So my first thought on Vitalik is he's very reasonable, and I wish more people were like him because he writes out his arguments. One thing he doesn't do is he doesn't character assassinate either side. We made this very clear on my show. He said anybody who believes AI doom or high AI risk, they're not Luddites. They're not people who are, permanent. Sam Altman had this language about Eliezer Yudkowsky. He said he's a prophet of doom. Vitalik Buterin completely disagreed. He said, no, these are not prophets of doom. These are people who have done a reasoned analysis and come out with a conclusion that you can't just character assassinate the person making the conclusion. So I really appreciated that about Vitalik. He lent his credibility to the whole argument that we may be doomed, and he specifically called out Eliezer Yudkowsky as somebody he appreciates. So I wanted to, pass that forward. Now, the other thing about Vitalik is he only has, I think, a less than 10% PDoom at this point. I forgot his exact number. It might have been 8%. It was in that ballpark. And I think he should really have it be a little bit higher because the argument that he rested on, it's called D/AC. You guys know that term?
Yeah, defensive acceleration as opposed to effective EAC, effective acceleration, the defensive acceleration is what it stands for, right?
Yeah, can you
Exactly.
explain
And
it to me? I don't know it.
so, yeah, so DIAC in a nutshell, it's the idea of like, yes, he's trying to strike a balance between let's slow things down and let's speed things up. He's like, look, speed is good, but we should try to find asymmetries where the thing we're speeding up is like defense favoring. So like a nuclear bomb is probably offense favoring, but if you make privacy technologies like crypto, obviously Vitalik loves crypto, right? If you have like public key encryption, for example, is an example of a technology that seems to let everybody protect their territory and doesn't really help people attack each other very much.
I see.
Yeah, so he's into
Yeah.
DAC, and it's a beautiful idea. If I could just say, okay, everybody work on asymmetry, technologies that favor defense, that would be great. I mean, the problem is just this: AI intelligence is just an omni-purpose technology, right? It can just do everything, right? It's like imagine I just invented, imagine everybody only had 100 IQ, and I just invented somebody with 130 IQ. That's not going to be a defense favoring technology that I just invented, the 130 IQ brain. That brain is just going to be a multi-purpose thing, and it just matters how you steer it. And the steering question is different from the technological problem question. It's a totally different question that we don't understand well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the sad facts. Like, I wonder sometimes what's happening military-wise, right? Like, there is obviously a lot of partnerships being made between the biggest American companies and the military, and U.S. military has more spending power than it's ever had before. So it seems to me like if I was an alien and I looked at a planet like Earth and they were like, oh, they're instantly putting this incredibly powerful technology into their weapons, that seems like about the dumbest place to put that because that's not where you want things to get out of control. Those would be agents that were trained for all sorts of violence and whatnot. But then maybe also there's a lot of research in there trying to defend the United States and other countries against bad actors. And there's some breakthroughs there that we don't know about that would protect us. From like a military point of view, do you have any hope that the Pentagon's got some answers that the rest of us don't?
So I don't even see the AI risk problem to be that closely entangled with weapons being dangerous. I think about it a little bit as like sharks and lasers. So it's like, okay, these sharks are coming, and it's like, yeah, but what if somebody gave the sharks lasers? I'm like, okay, I mean, it's like, sure,
Like they're already gonna get
that, I
you.
guess that would be
Like,
worse, right? And it's the same thing as like humans. It's like imagine tigers are looking at humans, and somebody's like, okay, so these humans are coming on the sea, and you say they're going to be really good at hunting us, and somebody's like, what about if somebody gave the humans claws like ours? Is that going to make them like, wait? It's like, okay, yeah, I guess giving human tiger claws is going to make them a bigger threat to tigers. But at the end of the day, we just have so many ways to impose our will on the tigers, right? It's just like, now that said, don't get me wrong. I actually think the weapons may accelerate, right? They may shorten the timeline a little bit, but and I know that Leopold Aschenbrenner seemed to make a really big deal of like that kind of fight. And like, sure, yeah, it's a big deal, but it just doesn't change the big picture that we have a more intelligent agent here that we can't control.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, and speaking of military, and we're maybe getting into, of course, maybe conflict with other nations. So I think out of the people that are sold on this idea of, we're building something super intelligent, how do we stop it? Maybe they understand, they share your concerns. Maybe they have P doom that's in the low single digits, whatever. Like, but they're not dismissive of it. You know, China is, of course, oftentimes sort of like the big counter argument to a lot of the things that are presented. I just off the top of my head, Eliezer talked about on the Hard Fork podcast about, what happens if one nation, the entire world agrees to not develop AI, one nation decides to go against it. What would happen? We would have our diplomats reach out and say, hey, stop doing that, or we're going to have some sort of a, conventional attack on your country, on the data centers. And if they don't do it, then we follow through on it. I guess that sounds reasonable. What he was saying, a lot of people that have like the counter arguments against pausing AI or stopping AI development is they're saying eventually that leads to a sort of one world government. You kind of need that authoritarian regime kind of managing everything. Is that a valid argument, or is there some logical fallacy there?
Yeah, good question.
So, I mean, this is like the saddest part of the discussion because, as you say, people do accuse. I saw Jacob Hellberg, he's in a high position in government these days. I forgot his title, but he even tweeted, and Sri Ramakrishnan similarly is a tech guy who went into government, and they're posting stuff like, we reject catastrophism, right? Like we just
Right,
can't
I
have that
saw that,
mindset.
yep.
We have to go forward. And it's like, look, to me, it's not my mindset. I mean, I agree. It's depressing. It's depressing to say, let's pump the gas and pump the brakes and and hope that China is willing to deal with us. And, let's impose all these hard problems on ourselves, things that could slow down our economy, stall potentially tech progress, create potentially weakness compared to other. I agree. These are all bad. I just also think racing to build something we don't know how to control, which is more intelligent than us, is also very bad. So I would describe this as stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it's a very common maneuver for people to just look at the rock. Let's say the rock is like, China will never cooperate, or we can never slow down the economy, or whatever their rock is, or like, we can never listen to catastrophism. Whatever their rock is, like, look, this is, everybody focus on this. We can't do this. This is an absolute no. And I'm like, okay, but over here, there's like another absolute no, right? So it's just a rock and a hard place. Yeah, if you focus on one side of the equation, then you can make the other side look dumb, but you got to focus on both sides.
I read a number of Chinese papers, two of them, I think, that, we're talking about some developments in the AI field. One of them is how easy the open source models, how they're approaching the red line, or they have actually said they passed the red line of being able to self-replicate. So they showed how these models, I think the Qwen and DeepSeek and I forget what, and also they tested the old meta models, Llama, etc., how they were able to self-replicate, create some sort of like right before somebody would hit the kill switch, they would be able to copy themselves over, etc. And near the bottom of like the conclusion of the paper, these researchers said, this is why it's very important that we have a national conversation about, some sort of regulations for these AI models. And there are two papers out of China that had language more or less exactly the same. So it's interesting that we have Chinese researchers, in a completely different sort of economy and monetary system and just different culture, saying these things, kind of mirroring what the AI researchers here in the US are saying, right? Kind of like so it's not like China's like, go, 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 and we're like, pause. The researchers on both sides are signaling that there's something happening. So what's driving it? Is it just the CEOs and the politics, or sort of like the government leaders, while where do you think that most of the AI researchers are? Are most of them like, hey, this is dangerous?
So first of all, I want to put in a good word for China. I don't get the impression that China is saying we have to accelerate no matter what. We have to beat the US. I mean, there's obviously some of that. And presumably some of it is a reaction to all the rhetoric coming out about it. I mean, from my perspective, we're kind of starting it. Like we're kind of instigating. The geopolitics of this aren't my area of expertise. But I think it's critical that we give China a chance. And a lot of what I'm seeing is like not even giving China a chance, just kind of pre-assuming like, of course, China's going to press every lever that they can to make AI go faster. And it's like, are you sure? It's not like the CCP is big on disruption, right? They're kind of known for copying the US, like the US will innovate and then they'll copy it and they'll optimize it. And they don't want a power disruption. Like they're happy with the CCP the way it is. Like they're not trying to get into this totally new paradigm. They're not trying to take risks. I mean, that's the little bit I know about the CCP. I don't think that they're like these hardcore, let's build superintelligence. I think we in the US are driving that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're going to continue the conversation over on the Doom debates. We're going to be joining you in a few minutes. So we're going to do another podcast here. But what can you share with our audience about where this video is going to be, that we're about to film, and other things that you find to be important messages that people should be listening to, subscribing to, people to be listening to? Go ahead and just share anything that you want.
Great. So maybe some of your audience has been listening to this conversation and be like, oh, crap, is it really as bad as Liron is saying? Because I feel like other podcasts aren't telling me this. And that's basically my mission, is to just be at the forefront of being like, wake up, people. Like, we need to be saying this on more podcasts. If you go to my show, doomdebates.com or youtube.com/@doomdebates, either way, there's a bunch of different guests on. Some of them are legit guests like Vitalik Buterin or Eliezer Yudkowsky, and they'll tell you why there are good cases why we're doomed. And then there's other guests who push back. But like I said, the pushback is all over the place. There's not even like a unified pushback. So check out my show to learn more.
Absolutely. And from my perspective, I think it's important that we don't get polarized and stop listening to each other, because I know a lot of you might have very different opinions about, meaning my audience, the listeners, have very different opinions about where the risk is, if it's real or not. And that's okay. But we have to listen. We have to learn. I ordered Eliezer's book. It's coming tomorrow between, Amazon willing, between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. So I'm planning to read it. And I think it should be, everybody should be listening to all the sides of the story. We can't just live in our little bubble and ignore other good arguments. There's incredibly smart people in the AI safety community, and they should be listened to. We should be understanding the rationale behind it, because the more and more it seems like we're moving forward, it's becoming obvious that this is still an open problem. We didn't solve this problem, so there's still a lot of risks, and I think very few people are denying that. So with that said, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.